Hey guys, welcome back. Today's lesson is called Isn't That Backward? And our sticky statement is live backward by serving forward. Okay, so here's a jar on the screen, and I want you to look at it and guess how many pieces of candy you think are in it. If we were in person, I would give you a guess card that looked like this, but you can just have the number in your head and see if you're right when I tell you the amount that is in. Look at this awesome jar of treats. Has everyone had a chance to make a guess as to how many pieces of candy are in this jar? If you haven't, make sure that you guess. We're going to, if we're in person, give the candy jar to someone in this room. Now, are you done guessing? If you need more time, pause the video so I do not ruin your guess with the number of candies in this jar. Okay, so the total amount of candy in this jar is 360 pieces of candy. Now, if you were close, you would think that I would give you the jar of candy because you were the closest. But I'm going to actually give it to the person who guessed the farthest away from the number of pieces of candy in the jar. That seems backwards, doesn't it? Usually when you guess a number for a contest like this, you are trying to get closest to the amount that's in the jar. But we didn't tell you that our game was backwards. Why would we do that? The little game was backwards because in our lesson today, we are going to see an idea that Jesus taught that seemed backwards to most people. Today's lesson is the second lesson in a 4-part series called Action, Gifted to Serve. In all of the lessons in this series, we will be talking about service and serving others. It will be your call to action, your call to serve, and the way that Jesus taught about service seemed a little backwards to many people. Today, we are going to learn to live backward by serving forward. Let's talk about it. Our story can be found in the book of Luke, chapter 22, but we can read parts of this story in both the Gospel of Matthew and John as well. We pick up the story. Jesus had just had dinner with the men who followed him. We call those guys his disciples. After dinner, Jesus did something that shocked his disciples. He served them by washing their feet. Can you imagine washing the feet of 12 other people? In Bible times, people didn't wear socks and shoes. They just wore sandals. Imagine how dirty their feet would have been from walking everywhere. Foot washing was the task of a servant and one of the lowliest jobs there was. Would you like to wash someone's dirty feet? Even though Jesus was a king, he served like a servant. Jesus did it because he wanted to show his disciples what it means to be a servant. That's in Mark chapter 10, verse 45. That seems backward. Kings aren't supposed to be servants, are they? They have servants to do things for them. The way Jesus served seemed backward to most people, and he taught his disciples to live backward by serving forward. During this time with Jesus, the disciples were having a discussion. Let's see what the disciples are talking about after being served by their leader. I'm going to read Luke 22, verse 24. It reads, "And there was also a strife among them. Which of them should be accounted the greatest?" It says the disciples had a dispute. That's an argument. Wait, didn't they just have a nice meal where they were treated like they were important? Why would they argue? Do you remember what the verse said? They were arguing over who was the greatest. They each wanted to be the greatest and asked Jesus who was the greatest out of all the disciples. Can you picture these grown men arguing over who was greater than the other? Let's use our imagination for a few seconds to think about what it might have sounded like. I'm pretty sure that Jesus would call me the greatest. I'm the one he loves, John might have argued. This could have brought a response from Thomas. Yeah, I doubt that. If anyone is the greatest, it's me. James might have replied, you can't be the greatest. You have a twin. You're not even the oldest between the two of you, are you? Gentlemen, please, there is only one person here who walked on water with Jesus. If you are looking for greatness, look no further than yours truly, Peter might have said. We don't know that they really said those things, but they were arguing over who was the greatest. So far, this story isn't really backward. People usually think of themselves first, don't they? The disciples were thinking like the average person, but Jesus was about to call them to a better way of living. Let's see what happened next in Luke 22, verse 25 through 27. It reads, "And he said unto them, The kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors. But ye shall not be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief, and he that doth serve. For whether is greater, he that sitteth at meat, or he that serveth, is not he that sitteth at meat? But I am among you as he that serveth." Jesus talked to them about their behavior. He said that kings rule over the people and lord over them. This means that they act like they are better than everyone else. They require people to serve them. That's how it has been throughout history. The disciples would have understood this way of thinking, but Jesus told them that is not the way it should be among them. They were called to a better way of doing things. This is where the backward idea shows up. Jesus said that someone who is truly great will serve others, not look for someone to serve him. Jesus had an illustration that his disciples would understand. He talked about a person sitting at a table eating, or a table to eat. Jesus pointed out that most people think that the person sitting at the table being served is greater than the person who is doing the serving. Jesus is the greatest among all men, but instead of expecting to be served, he served others. He was calling his disciples to follow his example, to follow this backwards way of thinking. Serve, don't expect to be served. He was calling them to live backward by serving forward. In fact, this is the reason Jesus came. Let's look at one verse in the book of Mark 10, verse 45. "For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many." Jesus left heaven to come here and serve people. Even though he is God and worthy of being served, his purpose was to serve others. If Jesus, the greatest of all, came to serve, shouldn't we follow his example? What are some ways Jesus served others? He helped those in need. He fed those who were hungry. He encouraged those who were bullied. He healed those who were sick. He loved those whom no one else loved. He thought of others' needs before his own. His way of life was radically different from the normal human response. To others, this was backward. But Jesus chose to live backward by serving forward. This idea doesn't come naturally to us, does it? Just like the disciples, people today struggle with thinking of themselves first, too. This backward thinking that Jesus taught is so different than how we automatically respond to situations. It is not natural to live backward by serving forward. It's our nature to want to be first, to be the favorite, the best, first place, or greater than others. Jesus reminds us that true greatness comes when you serve others ahead of yourself. He calls us to live backward by serving forward. So how can we do this? How is it possible to follow Jesus' example? You can't heal the sick. You can't feed 5,000 people with a handful of food. You can't raise the dead back to life. How are you supposed to be like Jesus? Well, Jesus served the ways that he was able. Jesus saw the needs of those around him and worked to meet those needs. This is how you can be like Jesus. You can serve in the ways you are able. You can look for the needs of those around you and meet the needs that you can meet. But it begins with having a backward way of thinking. You have to get it in your mind that true greatness comes when you serve other people. Let's see if you can recognize ways you can serve. As you hear the scenarios, tell me ways that you can serve others. You are about to walk into the post office and you see someone coming toward the door with an armful of boxes. If someone has a me first attitude, they might just walk into the building so they can be in front of that person in line. But if we have a live backward by serving forward attitude, how can we serve? Yes, you might say you hold the door open and let them go in front of you in line. Scenario 2. Your mom is cooking dinner and the table isn't set. How can you serve? By setting the table. You are walking down the hall at school or at church and you see trash lying on the floor. How can you serve? By picking up the trash. You walk into a room at church or at school and you see someone stacking all the chairs. You can help them stack the chairs. Scenario 5. You watch someone drop an armload of books in the hallway at school. How can you serve? You can help them by helping them pick up their books. Scenario 6. You walk out into the garage and see your dad sweeping up a bunch of sawdust. How can you serve? You could ask him, does he want you to sweep and do that? Or you could ask him, can you hold the dustpan for him while he's sweeping? Scenario 7. Your younger sister is trying to tie her shoes and is really struggling with it. How can you serve? You could either tie her shoe or teach her how to tie her shoe. Scenario 8. It is time for dessert and your parents or guardian put a container of ice cream on the table. How can you serve? You could serve by getting the bowls for the ice cream if they're not already on the table, or you can ask, could you scoop the ice cream in everybody's bowl? Get some spoons if you don't have them at the table. You see, you can live backward by serving forward. Every day and many times throughout the day, you are giving chances to serve others. Jesus' example teaches us to live backward by serving forward. That is how to be truly great. Will you live backward by serving forward? Living backward does not come easily, so you need God's help to remind you to choose to serve others before yourself. Do you have a desire to live this way? Will you tell God that you desire to serve others? If so, ask Him to help you see how you can serve others and then choose to serve others. Prayer time. As we end today, ask yourself this question. What can I do to serve someone this week? Keep your eyes open this week and pay attention to what is happening around you. When you see a chance to serve someone else, ask them, how can I help? Then get to work serving them. It may seem like the backward thing to do, but serve anyway. Review questions. Jesus showed the disciples service after a big meal by washing their blank. A, heads, B, hands, C, feet. C, feet. True or false? Jesus washed all of the disciples' feet except Judas because Judas betrayed him. False. He washed all of the feet of the disciples. The disciples then had a dispute about what? A, who would set the table. B, who would wash their feet. C, who was the greatest. See who was the greatest. True or false? Since Jesus is the greatest, he told his disciples to do everything they can to get to the top and be the greatest. False. Jesus said that true greatness was what? A, being the oldest. B, being the fastest. C, being a servant. C, being a servant. Jesus said in Mark 10:45 that his purpose in coming to earth was to blank. A, eat. B, dance. C, serve. C, serve. True or false? Jesus' teaching to put others ahead of yourself is easy for most people to do. False. True or false? Jesus didn't serve anyone because he was the one who should be served. false. Our lesson taught us to live blank by observing blank. A, backward, forward. B, loud, softly. C, long, short. A, backward, forward. True or false? Living backward means serving others before yourself. True. All right, that is the end of today's lesson. I hope that you learned something and that you apply it to your life. And remember, try to serve someone this week. Have a great, safe, blessed week.